Community Church welcomes you as it gathers in person and virtually in these times that are changing, in transition, aren't we? We've done so well pulling through COVID and getting things going, and it's wonderful to have an audience on YouTube as well, and so we welcome you. Our purpose is to form a community to practice and advance a free and responsible search of truth and meaning as a progressive and open-minded and inclusive religious community. We believe we need not think alike to love alike. Ours is a faith in action as we do the work of justice and compassion in our quest to live ethically, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of all. We welcome those who come in the spirit of love. You are welcomed here. You are welcomed here. Our Pastor Stacy has, let's do the land acknowledgement on the back of the order of service, if you'd like to read along with me. We acknowledge and pay tribute to the original inhabitants of this land. The city of New Orleans is a continuation of an indigenous trade hub on the Mississippi River, known for thousands of years as Bulonto. Tribes that have lived on this land include the Caddo, the Natchez, the Choctaw, Chickamauga, Puma, the Tunica, the Lux, Isak, among others. We recognize that a result of broken treaties and involuntary removals, Native Americans were often forced from their lands. We remember and pay respect to the communities impacted by these actions. Native peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and the resilient voices of Native Americans remain an inseparable part of our local culture. With gratitude and honor, we acknowledge the indigenous nations that have lived and continue to thrive here. Pastor Stacy has a few announcements.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So I'll try to briefly list for you the 4 things I want to let you know about. Earth Day weekend is coming up. It's always a big Sunday for our denomination and our congregation. So Saturday at 7 p.m., there is a film that I have flyers out in the lobby about the Connectivity Project. And so it'll be a nice social event and a film. It's about an hour, maybe a little more, and time for conversation. That's Saturday evening. Sunday morning, we're going to have our annual Earth Day service here, and First Church is going to, on the other side of town, is going to be joining our congregation here, and we're going to have Earth Day hymns, and we're hoping to do it outside. I still have hope that that can happen. How that will happen is if everyone brings folding chairs or camping chairs. That's the new vision I have for how we're going to get chairs outside. So, and if weather is good, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to have both choirs from First Church and our church here come together, and we'll be doing our hymns probably outside, which I think will be lovely. Also, today, about 7 of you have signed up for a voodoo tour, and we're going to be doing that after the service at 3 p.m., and we'll meet at Louis Armstrong Park on Rampart. I have 9 tickets, about 7 have signed up, so if a couple of you want to join at the spur of the moment and join, it's at 3 o'clock at Louis Armstrong Park today. And it's led by someone who, multi-generation of their family being here in New Orleans and practicing the historic practice of voodoo culture here in this city. I did it with my sister when I moved here and found it fascinating and wanted to invite others to join me for another visit to learn more about this important culture of ours here in the city. The other thing I want to announce is there's a last-minute gathering that's being organized as in the last 24 hours, 48 hours in Nashville. So if you would like to join me on the last second or go up by yourself, many Unitarian Universalist congregations, interfaith groups, faiths of every denomination or almost every denomination will be joining Reverend Barber in Nashville. I think it's 2 o'clock, and we're going to be marching and coming together, say enough is enough, and to be led and inspired by the Tennessee Three that have been so bold and courageous in saying that no more children dying on their watch. So if you're interested in joining me, please do that. I leave tonight at about 6 p.m. in my car, room for one carpool spot with my dog Copper, and or you can come up on your own and I'll give you the details and where to meet. So those are my announcements this morning. And I have opening words for you from Desmond Tutu. We are fragile creatures, and it is from this weakness, not despite it, that we discover the possibility of true joy. And now Reverend Jacqueline will lead us in our chalice lighting.
As we light the chalice, let us sing the words printed in the order of your service.
While we wait for it to come on, this is a story. I thought it was really beautiful, and it's going along with a message that we have today. It's called What If?
What If? Written by Samantha Berger, illustrated by Mike Corrado.
With a pencil and paper, I write and draw art to create many stories that come from my heart. But what if that pencil one day disappeared? I fold up the paper till stories appeared. And what if that paper was no longer there? I'd chisel the table and then carve the chair. And what if there wasn't a chair here at all? I'd chip and I'd peel at the paint on the wall. And what if there wasn't a wall anymore? I might build a story from boards in the floor. Without any floor, I could still use the land and sketch out a tail in the dirt with my hand. I could still shape the leaves. I could still sculpt the snow. I could still plant the flowers and make kingdoms grow. Without any land, I would still use the light. Invent shadow stories the sun would ignite. If there was no light, I would still use my voice to sing out my stories, to chant and rejoice. I'd still have my body to twist and to bend, to dance out my stories beginning to end. If I had nothing, but still had my mind, there'd always be stories to seek and to find. If I know nothing but one bit of fate, as long as I live, I will always create. As long as I live, I will always create.
Thank you. If the children want to join me in religious education, we can sing them out for me, please.
At this time, we weave the fabric of our community even deeper as we share with one another our joy or sorrow. If you're participating online, you can put your concern in the chat box. We'll do our best to also acknowledge that. If you would like to express, we need cards. Do we have an usher, a greeter that can get some cards for us for people to fill out? And so we have cards that will pass out in the congregation while we sing If I Could Stop My Heart from Breaking, number 292. say a particular joy of mine is looking out on your faces this morning and seeing some folks that we haven't seen for a while and seeing newer people. And we're so thrilled to have visitors with us today. And children, we have different amounts of children on different Sundays, so we're trying to get that stabilized, lots of children. Jim O'Neill writes that he has a sorrow that so many in our state wish to deny our history of slavery and racism in our schools and colleges. And he has a joy that so many are here to enjoy our music and culture at the French Quarter Festival. Laura writes, Tennessee State Representative Justin Pierce was guest preacher at the Church of the River, Memphis Premier UU Church, Easter Sunday. Please light a candle in honor of Avis's birthday. She would have been 98. This is a beloved member that passed away just this year. Laura wrote a joy, had a wonderful time at last night's dinner at 6 at Charlotte Pataday's home. She's a lovely hostess, good food, great company. If you haven't participated in the dinners for 6, it's a wonderful social time that the church does once a month. Bill Fernandez writes, my former mother-in-law, Ann Scott, Cindy Scott's mom, passed away peacefully March the 26th in Mexico. She was a wonderful person and will be deeply missed. So we send our thoughts to Bill and to Cindy. We'll light a candle for those joys that have remained deep within our heart. I'm sorry, it looks like Marilyn has one. I'm sorry.
I just would like to light a candle for Paula Hawkins, who had a problem, an unexpected problem with an aneurysm in the brain, and she's doing fine now, but she will eventually have to get some surgery.
So that is a concern for Paula Hawkins, who's had a medical emergency and scare and is doing well, but will have to face some surgery. And lastly, we'll light a candle for those sorrows that remain deep within your hearts, not ready to be shared. I'm reminded every Sunday how we all come to congregation to worship, to gather, all of us in different states of mind and soul health. And it's so good to be together on a Sunday. Reverend Stacy has a reading for us now.
So my reading for you comes from the back of our hymnal, reading number 496 from Harry Meserve. From arrogance, pompousness, and from thinking ourselves more important than we are, may some saving sense of humor liberate us. For allowing ourselves to ridicule the faith of others, may we be forgiven. From making war and calling it peace, special privilege, and calling injustice, indifferences and calling it tolerance, pollution and calling it progress, may we be cured. For telling ourselves and others that evil is inevitable while good is impossible, may we stand corrected. God of our mixed up, tragic, aspiring, doubting, and insurgent lives, help us to be as good as in our hearts we have always wanted to be. Amen. And now, the choir will lead us in singing hymn number 96. I cannot think of them instead. So for those of you who don't know, I served as a chaplain at University Medical Center for a year, leading right up to my service here as your minister at Community Church. As a chaplain for the ICU unit and the ER, I witnessed a lot of death in that year. Sometimes people died alone. Often, many at death were with family. At times, a family expressed 100% of their love. Sometimes, it was more complicated. Sometimes, there were difficult relations. And it got me to thinking a lot about reconciliation and forgiveness in our lives. Some would say to their dying loved ones something like, "I am sorry that I didn't say I love you more. You are a good spouse, a good parent, the most beautiful child." Some would say something like, "I wish you said you cared and loved me more. But I understand at this point there is something from your experience in life where that was hard for you." Sometimes the person died alone and understood with very deep regret why there was no one at their bedside at death. Sometimes we wait until death before we analyze regrets, these sins tucked deep in the closets of our mind. Once a sin or fear is released into the open, whether in reconciliation or maybe with a psychotherapist, it doesn't have the same strong power it had once before. And in the presence of non-judgment, we find we might not be alone in our pains. Sometimes we expect the perfection of someone else before letting ourselves aim to be better. It's like giving away all your power to someone else for you to be happy. It doesn't make sense. It's like saying, if you don't say you're sorry first, then I won't say sorry either, and remain bitter towards you and hold that bitterness inside me to prove a point to you. And you hold that anger within you. Pride has been defined many ways, including in the context of spirituality or different religious traditions. In Buddhism, it is often considered a poison. These poisons also include emotions such or actions as greed, hatred, delusion, some form of attachment or aversion, ignorance, and jealousy. And in the concept of that term, I am right, I know I am, and hence others are wrong in that pride. This pride, sometimes resentment towards others, in Buddhism, it's called a negative emotion versus a positive emotion. And positive emotions enacted into the world help to soften or eliminate these negative emotions that we might embody and live out into the world. Until we are present in life with love, compassion, and forgiveness for self and other, embracing the interconnectedness with others in this life, we are often beholden to some part of us, within us, with hate, fear, non-giving, non-forgiving aspects of ourselves or brokenness. And little by little, we try to let the tight grasp of jealousy, greed, or hatred, or pride go. I am not saying to fully forgive someone who has truly harmed you, unless that is a personal path that you might want to undertake. Sometimes forgiving yourself in terms of your own judgments upon yourself is the greatest thing you can do. We all have some kind of embodied trauma at some point. They could be minor, they could be major. Being bullied at school in varying degrees, abusive spouses, abusive parents, and various forms of violence. Letting go to that hatred and ill will that is stored in your body, you can let go of to benefit your own mental health, if nothing else. And if you can let go of those feelings for yourself, there is nothing that's like sticky or Velcro-like that holds that hatred and anger onto someone else. You become free, and something is softened beyond your own body and emotions that you've been holding in yourself. Oprah Winfrey said, "Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could have been any different." Things in trauma can come incrementally in life, as opposed to sudden or a massive event in our lives. But both situations share commonalities. Maybe someone harmed you. You don't necessarily have to forgive them, but you can release the hatred that is stored in your body for the love of yourself. Maybe you can forgive someone who is just generally mean. Keep in mind that harm has likely been done to them as well to propagate that harm to others in you. Maybe your kindness in return or compassion is the seed for something else to flourish instead of anger and fear, and the choice is often yours. If someone else is miserable, an example is that maybe it is affecting your job, but you don't want to quit. But many know from our own experience that when anger, fear, and resentment is met with anger, fear, and resentment, the resulting math of emotions is often more anger, fear, and resentment to follow. It accumulates, sometimes exponentially. What seems to escape us at times is that math of emotions, as I'll call it, can be that love and compassion do the same. It begins to accumulate, sometimes exponentially. It is not necessary to keep the cycle going of fear and anger in our relations. Having the ability to empower ourselves to get off that hamster wheel of those negative emotions, and the cycle can stop with us. We see this not just in intergenerational harm of habitual patterns repeating themselves, but every conversation and every argument of someone being right and someone being wrong. And I think we all have those experiences with family members at some point, if nothing else. So when we are at our deathbeds, or at the deathbed of a loved one, it doesn't seem to make any point of continuing these kind of arguments with loved ones. But we wish to measure these moments in love, in compassion, in forgiveness, in reconciliation, and surrender to what is most beautiful in this life. In terms of holding this right perspective or wrong perspective, assuming or hoping that no significant harm has been done, we can also look at the world of faith and religion. Depending on our faith perspectives, sometimes we've had the experience of a wrong or right faith that we hold. In working as a chaplain, I was reminded of the diversity of faith around the world. I must say, I have yet, in my time as a chaplain at University Medical Center, to have been a chaplain to a UU patient. But that was expected as a Unitarian Universalist. The Unitarian Universalist faith doesn't top the 20 top religions of the world. Yet, Unitarian Universalist chaplains are relatively in high demand in certain parts of this country, as Unitarian Universalists have a reputation of being tolerant of other perspectives and faith, as well as a genuine curiosity. In the current field of chaplaincy, the standard credentialed care and chaplaincy is an interfaith approach to chaplaincy. Chaplains coming from different traditions and views, even humanist chaplains, which are credentialed in this country. Since the late 20th century, the field of chaplaincy has increasingly taken this interfaith approach. Although here in the West it has been a Christian-influenced tradition, other faith traditions have engaged more recently in this interfaith chaplaincy approach. This means that not only do Christians attend, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, agnostics, and so on, assuming the patient is open to the engagement, but Buddhist chaplains will attend Christians, Jews, Muslims, agnostics, and so on. Chaplaincy is engaged in hospices, hospitals, higher education, and prisons are the more traditional places where you'll find a chaplain. At first glance, the role of a UU chaplain, seemed like a natural fit. Unitarian Universalists, with their open mind to all the world religions, often embracing interfaith and multi-faith views, would be a good fit for an interfaith chaplain. Being with those who are dying and grieving in moments of death and fear around illness from different perspectives in religious life. The diversity in religious traditions have influenced our own Unitarian Universalist faith, as our faith has evolved over the centuries and decades, which has been influenced by our own personal experiences that we bring to Unitarian Universalism. We know that as Unitarian Universalists, my experience and view as a Unitarian Universalist is going to be maybe a little different from other Unitarian Universalists, as our own lives are nuanced and the emphasis that we give to our own lived experiences and principles with our UU principles and our UU sources are going to be different from others. So there are just people who want to identify as simply Unitarian Universalists. We also have in our denomination Christian Unitarian Universalist, Humanist Unitarian Universalist, Buddhist Unitarian Universalists, Pagan Unitarian Universalists, among other UU identities. Our faith has 6 sources, and that third source states wisdom from the world's religions, which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life. Our faith incorporates many traditions that help us inform our own unique individual journeys, which is reflected in our 4th principle of our 7 principles, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We each have our unique starting points in faith, whether in childhood or an adult, and for some that faith incorporates humanist views or a form of agnosticism in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But it could also be from a Buddhist view or other faith perspective. Sometimes our faiths in adulthood mirror those of our childhood, and often they don't, or evolve in nuanced ways. In our different starting points with searches of the divine and ultimate truths, however we incorporate that language, we search for purpose of human life, the meaning of our individual lives, and hence the meaning of our deaths. Our first source is the direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. We each have our own unique direct experiences in this mystery and wonder of life, so there is an invitation to acknowledge others and their direct experiences as just as important. When someone tells us we are wrong for our religious views and we need to change, maybe towards a more conservative faith view, this approach generally doesn't invite gentleness, openness, or a welcoming spirit to UUs in seeking freedom of a free search for our own religious path. If someone came up to us today and said UUism isn't a good religion, we would likely reject the message and probably the messenger. So we can also flip this script. Because I've been a Unitarian Universalist for many years, and I've attended several congregations over those years. And how many times, maybe, have we not included the faith of others as equal to our own search? Maybe we dismiss them as too conservative, too religious, too in the past, and so on. But make no mistake, we are a liberal religion. As our 5th and 6th principles state, the right of conscience and the use of our democratic process within our congregations and in society at large, and the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. We stand firm in our faith, but do we ever have to reject the faith of another? How does that invite another with compassion to enter the door of another possible way to invite others into beloved community? Or in other words, do we ever have to reject the trauma, the hurt, another viewpoint of another to uplift our own? Can this be a starting point for a path of forgiveness? As an interfaith chaplain, I didn't decide the relevancy or not of another's faith. It is not my job in the moment of a crisis to inquire the various relevancies of someone else's theology. My job as a chaplain was to meet them human to human in their grieving and their suffering, as well as hope and ability to engage in faith with a journey of healing or acceptance. That openness, that invitation of welcoming a person who feels broken in their bodies and souls allowed me as a Unitarian Universalist to live out our first and second principles, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and compassion in human relations. Regardless of our faith, regardless of our histories, regardless of our traumas, regardless of our privileges, we all have inherent worth and dignity that is worthy of compassion in human relations. As a Buddhist in the interfaith world, Masao Abe, who has taught at Nara University in Japan and Columbia University, states in Buddhism and interfaith dialogue, when the divine, God, or Buddha is believed to be self-assertive, self-existing, enduring, and substantial, then our idea of the divine becomes authoritative, commanding, and intolerant. By contrast, when the divine, God, or Buddha is believed to be self-negating, relational, and non-substantial, the idea of the divine becomes compassionate, all-loving, and tolerant. Abe states from theologian Trollish, who says that each religion is a different cultural manifestation of the human struggle from the divine source to the divine goal. Our Unitarian Universalist third source celebrates world religions, and in that spirit, I think of the 19th century Hindu Indian mystic Sri Ramakrishna, who says, "It has been recognized in the most ancient of times, there are various forms of worshiping God. It also recognizes that different natures require different forms. Your method of coming to God may not be my method. Possibly it might hurt me. Such an idea that there is one way for everybody is injurious, meaningless, and to entirely be avoided. Woe unto the world is when everybody is of the same religious opinion and takes to the same path. Then all religions and all thought will be destroyed. Variety is the very soul of life. When it dies out entirely, creation will die. When the variation in thought is kept up, we must exist and need not quarrel because of that variety. Your way is very good, but not for me. My way is good for me, but not for you." So as Unitarian Universalists, we can expand his idea of God and think of the word divine, or maybe holy universe. As a chaplain, I didn't look at who agreed with my view of God or the divine or who might not. People are suffering at their most critical moments in life, including the very end of this life, possibly wondering whether they reached all their goals in life that they wished, whether they are dying with regrets, whether they used the time in this life as they had intended, or whether survivors have regrets of what was said or not said. At the moment of death of a grieving loved one, whether they believe COVID is a hoax or not, whether they are living in apocalyptic times or not, I met them where they were at with their theologies, as they made sense of their life, or maybe that life of a loved one. As a Unitarian Universalist chaplain, I got to accept others where they were, as I don't have a faith that is fundamental, or rigid, or non-porous, or opaque, but one that is inclusive, compassionate, and accepting of others. I got to acknowledge, engage, and celebrate the diversity of the people that I cared for. As Unitarian Universalists, we are porous in our fluidity, in our inclusivity, in our diversity, in our justice-seeking actions, and in our compassion. We are a people of a liberal faith, accepting of people wherever their pain may originate, so that we can seek connection and offer compassion. So how does a Unitarian Universalist chaplain attend faiths of those who consider themselves maybe full gospel or Pentecostal? The interfaith chaplaincy model is a model where others can look to where a family member or other who might have a different view of faith, religion, or philosophy in life, to focus on the commonality of love and beauty of life, not the differences. It can be a reference point in looking how to work around forgiveness and compassion. And what is the trauma that others hold that has prevented them from living their best and most compassionate lives? And how can we use our Unitarian Universalist faith to guide us in this process? As a chaplain, I met the patients and families where they were at, regardless of my faith, yet my faith directs me in engaging with them. So what happens when a child suffers catastrophic brain injury with no medical cure for recovery, and the family believes God will still heal their beloved because of their deep faith? What happens when a person has third-degree burns over most of their body, has increasing complications, including brain death, and the family says if prayers are strong enough and good enough, they will miraculously heal because God makes miracles happen for the faithful? What happens when COVID patients arrive denying COVID exists, including their family members until their last breath? What happens when a family tries to understand why their daughter died in a drunk driving tragedy and believes in a wrathful God? Trying to correct someone's theology based on mine doesn't help when people are in crisis. Being there with compassion, accompanying those grieving in their own search for meaning does. My Unitarian Universalist faith has me searching for what is whole, what unites, and what is holy in the interconnectedness of this life. I believe that what is most important in a life that is fractured and sometimes full of doubt is that we can unite in compassion for each other. And we can hold compassion in our hearts for those who we've already lost, maybe with things unresolved. But we can continue to hold all the fragileness of this world that never ends with ongoing love. Our faith can guide us in how to relate to others, not necessarily how others should or should not relate to us. We can live our personal faith into the world, hoping for a better world, a better self that arises out of that faith, with a deeper knowing of that interconnectedness of our lives. We have an option. We can be staring at death and say words like, "I am so sorry that I didn't say I love you more." Or, more hopefully, "I know I have said it 1,000,000 times, and I'm going to continue to say it again and again. I love you." May it be so, and amen. So this is the time where we have a plate that comes around, and it's an opportunity to give beyond the typical or your monthly pledge. We share every Sunday with a nonprofit that the Social Justice Committee supports. And for the month of April, that is with the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice. They are dedicated to improving the lives of children and family harmed by pollution and vulnerable to climate change here in the Gulf region. And now the choir and Nicholas will lead us in hymn number 52, In the Sweet Fields of Autumn. So we extinguish our chalice here, that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light your path as you leave this place. May it guide your way until we are together again. My closing words for you are from St. Francis of Assisi. Where hate rules, let us bring love. Where sorrow, joy. Let us strive more to comfort others than to be comforted, to understand others than to be understood, to love others more than to be loved. For it is in giving that we receive, and in pardoning that we are pardoned. And please join our choir in hymn number 18, What Wondrous Love Is This? join us in the fellowship hall for coffee if you would like. And I think there's some other treats that are there. And then come see me if you're interested in the voodoo tour at 3 p.m. And we'll make a plan on where to meet, probably at the Arch of Louis Armstrong Park sign. And may you all have a lovely day.